Hello, this is one of 7 content walkthroughs for the various religions and worldviews that are the focus of the Essex Agreed Syllabus. And this one is for Buddhism. There is an accompanying interview with Arya Sara, who is an ordained member of the Buddhist Sangha based in Chelmsford, which you can watch probably after this video, and they are available to support schools in the area as well. We can pass you details on. So important to remember that everything is framed by the 3 lenses. So we are asking theological questions and inquiring theologically to understand the core concepts, ideas, beliefs, and practices that underpin the various religions. And we're also asking philosophical questions. What are the kind of thoughts and ideas, the view of the world, the big questions, the metaphysical things, the questions that go beyond the what and into the whys and the deeper thoughts there. And we're also seeing through a human social sciences lens, thinking about, what's it like? What do believers do, and how do they act, and where are they? And so we're thinking about all of those 3 lenses simultaneously. Although, when you design an inquiry, you'll start with a question that is located firmly within one of those lenses. It's very difficult to talk about one without talking about the other. But by having all 3 and thinking about all 3, it reminds us that we need to consider them all when we're delivering good RE. So the first thing that you need to be aware of is that in the agreed syllabus, there are knowledge tables, which give you an indication, some guidance for the things that you will want to consider, the areas of subject knowledge that might be appropriate for each of the key stages, and that you will want to become confident in your understanding of in order to be able to plan good lessons. So the purpose of this video is to point out what that is, to explain some of these ideas, and to tell you where you can go to find out more information in order to develop your subject knowledge and your confidence as a result. There are 3 sets of inquiry questions that you can choose from. And of course, you could create alternative questions, but this is guidance. We have got, in the theology table, you can see we're broken down by key stage, as we are by subject knowledge. And you can see that we've got some gaps, which is where you would insert the name of the religion or the festival in order to build appropriately focused inquiry questions. And we have those for theology, philosophy, and the human social sciences. So, where do you go to develop good understanding of Buddhism? Well, it's often good to have a really strong starting point. And these set of videos, the animated world faith videos, are 15 minutes each, and they will give you a pretty good understanding of the core ideas that underpin Buddhism, Buddhist practices. It tells you the story of Siddhartha Gautama, who was the Buddha, the first Buddha. And Buddha means enlightened one. So the first person to attain that enlightenment, that sense of the interconnectedness of things, the distancing of the person from the physical realm, if you like. And then, of course, it explains all of the core ideas and rules. Within Buddhism, like within all religions, really, there are groups of principles, concepts, precepts. Within Buddhism, we talk about, and I'll just go back to the core content slide, but the triple refuge, for instance, that's the kind of the statement of faith of a Buddhist. So, like a Muslim might say, there is only one God and Muhammad is his prophet. A Buddhist will say, I take refuge in the Buddha, the Sangha, and the Dharma. And so that's taking refuge in the teachings of the Buddha. And refuge in this case is sort of is safety, security, putting your faith in. So that's the Buddha, the Dharma. So Dharma often is translated to mean rules or teachings. So these are the sayings, the teachings, the practices that they use to govern their lives. And I take refuge in the Sangha. And the Sangha is the core group of committed individuals who would be referred to as monks. And they are people who would subscribe even more strongly than your average, in inverted commas, Buddhist. In Sikhism, you would be talking about the Khalsa, for instance, and they would often look. They might have indicators that showed that they were a member of the Khalsa in Sikhism. So they would be wearing the 5Ks. And in Buddhism, commonly you would see a member of the Sangha would be wearing their robes. Although there might be some variations on that. Like in Buddhism, like in other faiths or belief systems, there are various strands within that, so various denominations, which you can trace back to in order to understand how the religion has developed. And that's a geographical question because Buddhism started in one place in northern India and then spread out from there. You have got in Key Stage 1 here the Jakarta Tales and the Tipitaka. So here we're looking at the stories that help us to understand Buddhism, the teachings and practices, the life of the Buddha, and so on. And I'll show you where to look for some of that information. In Key Stage 2, we're suggesting that you would look at the concept of the Buddha, the concept of enlightenment, and a person who is detached from the material trappings of the world in which we live in. And by that time, you would have also considered somewhere between Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2 the idea of God or the absence of a God as such within Buddhism. Now, Buddhism has beliefs in supernatural elements and realms, but it doesn't have an individual God. The concept of rebirth exists within Buddhism, but that can be understood as distinct from reincarnation within Hinduism. And the reason for that is that it might, to simplify it, in Hinduism, you might talk about me, I am going to be reincarnated. In Buddhism, you would talk more about the idea of there being a rebirth, a reincarnation, that some kind of energy or force might go on and be reborn into something else. But it wouldn't really be my soul. Soul is a word we sometimes use there. So there's a lack of there's a increased focus on detaching the person from the idea. It's the karma that travels on. And that's something which you could unpick in more detail. So Buddhists do worship. They have puja, which is a word you might recognize from Hinduism. And this is a coming together of Buddhists with a focal point, with somebody who might be leading that worship, that practice, but they are not worshipping the Buddha. They are focused. They might have a Buddha image at the front of the room. They might have the Dalai Lama as well, the spiritual leader of Tibetan Buddhism. But they wouldn't be worshipping those. They would be focusing on their own progression of their own enlightenment or their own journey, and focusing on the teachings of the Buddha. And there might be some meditation and metta bhavana, the idea of loving kindness and projecting that out into the world, is a core focus of Buddhist meditation. So you see some words here, the Four Noble Truths, the 5 precepts. So the Four Noble Truths are underpin, they are things that Buddhists must recognize as being true in order to be Buddhist and to progress through life. So they must recognize that all life involves wanting, all life involves suffering, and that you need to accept that it's our craving for things, our wanting things to be different to the way they are, that causes us to be unhappy. And that if we were to detach ourselves from this, that's how we could search for spiritual fulfillment and the middle way. And those are tied to a story about the Prince Siddhartha Gautama and his journey to become the Buddha. And I encourage you to develop your own level of familiarity with those. The cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. So that's the idea of karma and reincarnation there. And the 5 precepts are rules which Buddhists subscribe to about violence, lying, the way you use your body, the way you use your voice. Very similar crossover to all of the other faiths and belief systems and ways of living our lives, the kind of core, many of the core principles that underpin what we do. And you'll see in there the treatment of any kind of living thing. So that might lead you to a discussion about Buddhism and vegetarianism. Varying beliefs about God, we've talked about there for a moment already, although you might want to dig into this the ideas about there being other realms or supernatural elements within Buddhism, but not a god as such. We've talked about the Jakarta Tales and the Tipitaka and the Metta Sutta. So that these are all, there's concepts of teachings, books, written records, stories, sayings that you can look at in order to understand Buddhism. And we are looking here at how Buddha's experience impacted on beliefs. So Buddhists will, of course, look to the Buddha for guidance. You look at his life, how he lived his life in order to understand how they might live their own. And then in key stage 3, we're deepening our knowledge further. We're introducing some core terminology there with anicca, dukkha, and anatta. We're starting to introduce some understanding of the different types of Buddhism that have emerged around the world. The teachings of the Buddha are being dug into a little bit deeper there. The role of the Sangha and how they might be the focal point of a community and what that might look like. And the level of authority given to the teachings of the Buddha. So, how important are those? How are they used? And then we're introducing the Dalai Lama as well, so a spiritual leader of Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism. So you can see there's a deepening over time. Within philosophy, we're kind of deepening our understanding there. We're understanding a little bit more about the ethics and the way that Buddhists might lead their lives. We might be looking at some case studies of individual Buddhists and what their lives are like, how they find meaning and purpose in their own lives. And then when we're into the human social sciences, we're thinking more about maybe Buddhist attitudes towards the environment and again more about how they might live their lives and interact with one another and form a community of Buddhists, what that might mean. We might talk about festivals and pilgrimage, the symbols within Buddhism. You would often see the wheel in association with the Eightfold Path. You might start to look at Buddhist music, chanting, art, and the creation of mandalas as a meditative process or an act of worship. And in key stage 3, we might just dig deeper into that, looking at variations in terms of Buddhist interpretation, how the growth of Buddhism in Western culture and the portrayal in the media of Buddhism in movies, books, films, and the news itself. So you can see that there is a really broad understanding that we're seeking to develop here, and that it's not really that different to how you might go about exploring any other faith. And you'll see this commonality across the syllabus itself. So just a reminder of those questions there. We can choose questions from theology, philosophy, and social sciences. I'd encourage you to become familiar with those in order to make the right choices for demographic in your school. So where can you go to find some good quality resources to back up your teaching, your preparation, your own subject knowledge, and then your use of that in the classroom? Well, I've mentioned these animated world faith series. This could be great to use in the classroom. They are somewhat, I've used the word timeless here. They are, of course, timeless stories, but I think the videos themselves tend to stand the test of time in many ways, I think. I find it quite useful to screenshot images from these videos and then use it to storyboard with children. And of course, the core concepts are all explored here, so you can build some good questioning around this. It could form the focus of at various points of your inquiry. This would be a really good thing to use. But I would encourage, if you are new to the concept of Buddhism, this is actually a really nice way to just kind of understand all the core ideas and to take it from there. Well, as always, the BBC Bite Size Key Stage 1 and 2 have got a selection of well put together videos, explanations, resources as well as lesson ideas to help you to explore some of the core ideas that exist within Buddhism. And your process here would be to have decided on your question that you want to use for your 5-week inquiry, 5 or 6 week inquiry, and then to see which of these videos and resources and explanations might help you. As always, whether you're preparing for Key Stage 1, 2, or 3, you want to be your subject knowledge. You would like to be more developed than that of the students, of course. And so the BBC can be very good for that because you've got Key Stage 1, 2, 3, and then GCSE. So you can always stay a few steps ahead. Buddhism is a belief system where there is a great deal of vocabulary, some of which will be alien to you. And this is a good, I've linked the document here. This is a good selection of core vocabulary and concepts to help you out, to help your students out in developing that literacy that will lead to religious literacy. Key Stage 3, the videos shift more into real life rather than cartoon, if you like. And so this is great as you steer into the social sciences lens and thinking about the real lives of real Buddhists and how they come together to create a community. There's some wonderful photographs there that could form a great stimulus for a P4C type lesson, or to frame support your community of inquiry, to print out and to make available to your students in your class. Just a bit broader on the BBC again, within BBC Sounds and iPlayer, there's a good selection of videos and audio resources that you might find really useful for developing typically your own subject knowledge. There are some that might be suitable for use in a class, but they would be particularly good for developing your own understanding. You will often find on Thought for the Day or Prayer for the Day representatives from Buddhism giving some thoughts and ideas, and that could be a really nice way in as well, because of course that only comes in at around about 2 minutes in length. RE Online is the best place, I would argue, to really develop your subject knowledge. There are a selection of there's one essay, and that exists for every faith or belief system, and there's more out there than you might think, and they give a really thorough introduction to the different belief systems and worldviews. So I would highly recommend that you started there, and that will give you a great starting point, and that is designed for teachers. And then you'll also find some sections, Voices from the Buddhist Worldview Traditions is good. It's got a load of questions and answers. And then, of course, you can use RE Online to search for key stage specific resources, and they're tagged as knowledge, research, resources, and so on, that will help you to find exactly what you're looking for. There's some great lesson resources and images from lessons that have been delivered using the resources available on RE Online. TrueTube is an award-winning source of lesson plans, assembly ideas, videos, lesson resources. You need to sign up to access everything there, but it's free to do so. And then you can download any of those files there. You'll find some common series like the Charlie and Blue ones, and then you'll find other one-offs. You'll find a lot of videos and resources which are tied to events throughout the calendar year for each of the different religions, and also for other events like Holocaust Memorial Day, Black History Month, and so on. So it's a really good one to be kind of signing up to. And there's a calendar attached to TrueTube as well that might help you out. but you would definitely be able to find some good things here that might be useful to you. The National Association of Teachers of RE, if you are not already a member and your school is not a member, then I would highly recommend that you join and immerse yourself in that. It will give you reminders for things like the Strictly RE conferences every January. It will give you guidance for how to check resources for bias and make sure that you're using the right kinds of activities and sources of knowledge with your children. It will give you guidance for vetting speakers for schools and so on. But it also will deliver high quality CPD. There are some webinars that you can access that you do have to pay for, but will be very high quality if you were looking to develop the subject knowledge of teachers at your school for maybe a faith that was less familiar. And so that might be a good option for you. There is a UK-based Buddhist society that has some great videos and resources geared more towards adult Buddhists, I would say, but you might find very useful if you were looking to deepen your subject knowledge and understanding. In Essex, we have got the Colchester and the Mid-Essex Buddhist Centre, amongst others, but these are two that might be particularly useful for you. They would be very interested in talking to students, but I would encourage everybody to make sure that they were familiar with the code of conduct issued by NATRE, and SACRE can help you make contact and organise any kinds of connection you were looking to make. The impacts, I think, of having people who are living that life, be it any faith or belief system, talking to students directly can be really powerful, and especially when your subject knowledge, our subject knowledge, is not going to be as developed as somebody who is living their life in that way. Quite likely to be the case. So that could be a really powerful impact. And of course, you find out about the beliefs of the children and parents associated with the children in your class, because they can of course be great sources of knowledge and information experiences for your students. So if you were, Buddhism is a very visual faith, and all the faiths have got very strong visual components. But some of these might be familiar to you. This video up here is of Buddhist monks creating a mandala from sand, which is a meditative process that can go on for many days. And as soon as it's finished, they destroy it, illustrating the sense of impermanence of all things, and that if we detach ourselves from wanting things and wanting things to stay the same and accept that they won't, then we will be able to detach ourselves and to be happier. It's a great video. There are lots of good videos out there similar to this one, and it's a wonderful thing to do with students in your class, to have them finish, be proud of it, and then to let it go. There might be some tears. Here is a video which shows Buddhist throat breathing, Buddhist monks throat breathing. And that could be a really interesting thing to do with students, to look at some chanting. And you'll find that many Buddhist chants involve the phrase Om Mane Padme Hum, which roughly translated is "Hail to the jewel in the heart of the lotus." And the jewel in the heart of the lotus is the idea of the potential within all human beings to flourish, and from even the kind of like the lotus flower that flourishes in swampy environments. We can also flourish beautifully regardless of our background, where we've come from. So that's quite an interesting thing to explore, the chanting. And at the bottom here is an explanation of this image, the Wheel of Life, which you could use to teach all of the Buddhist ideas. In fact, this image is one which all Buddhist monasteries will have a very similar image to this. and it points out that it tells you about birth and death and rebirth and different realms and the three poisons that we should distance ourselves from, and the physical realm and how the Buddha can show us the way to escape from that, and so on. Well worth getting some understanding of, and of course very visual. A really interesting thing to get students to create versions of, or to explore in more detail. So in order to build a good quality program of study, we need to select questions from the theology, philosophy, and human social sciences list. We can focus on one religion, or we can make them comparative. And I think that there's some very good opportunities to compare. In the exemplar given by the Norwich Diocese to support the Norfolk Agreed Syllabus, which is very, very similar to the Essex, they have just two areas where Buddhism is explicitly explored. So in year 5 and year 6, one point comparing Buddhism and Christianity, looking about the meaning of life and great philosophers. So that's with a philosophical lens. And then how do Buddhists explain suffering in the world? And Buddhism does a very interesting take on that. And again, an opportunity to contrast with other faiths there, the problem of evil, and so on. And in that case, of course, we can see that this is from a theological lens there. You can access the table directly via this link here. And you can see exemplar, you can see supporting documentation that goes with these questions on the Norwich Diocese website. But what you would also notice is that actually it'd be very easy to adapt any of these questions to focus on Buddhism or any other faith. This is what you will see when you have a look at some of those inquiry overviews. This is the first page, and there are lots of elements. You can see them listed here, so that you can see that each one comes with a lesson summary. Here, how do Buddhists explain suffering in the world? And this is the five or six lessons, starting by engaging, then looking to inquire and explore, then evaluate, and then finally to express, where so you can see that you could probably tie this to Bloom's taxonomy quite nicely. You can see that kind of progression. I'd caveat that with I don't think that Bloom's is always the best way to understand or to categorize, but I think it does apply here in that you're starting by thinking you're intriguing, you're engaging, you're connecting with students' own experience, their own schemas, their own way of seeing the world through an engaging resource. Then you're starting to raise those questions, to analyze, to pull things apart a little bit, to understand to synthesize with existing understanding and with existing knowledge of faith. Then evaluation, to be able to kind of weigh up those ideas, to see what and why, and understand the reasoning. And then to express their own viewpoint, their own reasoning. The idea is that is unpacked over a sequence of 5 or 6 lessons. So there's lesson summaries here. If you open up this document where you can find them all, you'll be able to see keywords associated with each sequence of lessons, the core knowledge required, some home learning or homework that might be done, useful links that you might want to access, the learning outcomes, and any other supporting information. And this exists for all of the inquiries up to year 6 on the Norwich Diocese website. So you can see all of those there. And you will also find that there are 6 philosophical inquiries, which are even further resourced with a lot of detail and background to support, because of course the philosophical lens is more alien to people, and so there is additional support to go with that in order to help. So I hope that that has been helpful. And of course, you can always ask any questions. You can contact me. My email address will be attached to this somewhere. It's Benjamin J. Madison at gmail.com. But I should be quite easy to get hold of. If I could do anything to help you out, I'd be delighted. I hope that's been of some use. Have a good day.